Okay, so we learned about metamorphosis. Do you remember what metamorphosis is?
Like a person who's changed to thing to thing.
Okay, and so we were talking about a couple animals that go through metamorphosis. What animal did you want to write about?
A frog.
Okay, so what do we want to be our opener? So we brainstormed a couple ideas on the board, and do you remember what's the first one that we did?
Did you know some animals are?
Mr.Dickie, I think this pencil can go.
It's okay. So just get a new one. So did you know that some animals change?
Yeah.
Or we put, do you know what metamorphosis means? So what opener do you think you want to start with?
Frogs can catch flies.
Does that talk about metamorphosis or changing? Talking about frogs catching flies?
No.
So I'm thinking we want to talk about a frog changing. What if? Do you like the opener of talking to the reader?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if I said, did you know that a frog isn't always a frog?
Always a frog. Yes.
A frog's not always a frog. What does a frog start out as?
An egg,
And then what?
and then a tadpole.
A tadpole. So, do you think the reader might want to read on? Did you know that a frog wasn't always a frog?
No.
So what do you think? What do you want the opener to be then?
First the frog is an egg, and then a tadpole, and then a frog.
Okay, so that's great. We have like what our body's gonna be. So why don't we just work on our body of writing, and then we'll come back to our opener at the very end. Okay.
Okay.
So you can talk about the different steps. Now, what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with a heading for what you're gonna write about?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want your heading to be? What are you gonna write about?
A frog.
So let's just do that. Frogs.
Frogs.
Okay. And then we'll start. And then you'll talk about first what the frog started as, then next, and then last what the frog
Is
becomes.
it F-O-O-G-S?
F-R-O-G-S.
Okay,
Okay, bud?
Okay.
So now we finished our picture of the frog and our body of the frog. So frogs start out as an egg, and then they turn into a tadpole, and then they turn into a frog. So you've got your title, and you've got your information here. But I still want us to think about our opener, because we talked about some openers before. And we talked about maybe talking to the reader and asking them a question. And remember, we came up with two examples from the class that we talked about. We could say, did you know that some animals change from one thing to another? Or we said, do you know what metamorphosis is? And then when we were talking earlier, we said maybe, did you know that a frog didn't start out as a frog, as being a possible talking to the reader? So which one do you think you would want to use for your writing?
Do you know what is something?
Can you explain metamorphosis?
Yeah.
What's metamorphosis?
Like it can change to a thing to another thing.
Okay, so that's what. Do you know what metamorphosis is? Will be, and then you can explain what it is. So luckily we've got some room up here. So I'm going to put a star beside the opener that you can write down, and then we'll talk. Then you can explain it, just so it's easier for you to see. Okay. All right, bud. So what the text feature you're choosing to use is you're doing what? Do you remember what it's called when you're doing a
Diagram.
a diagram? Okay. So can you explain it so far what you're doing?
It's first an egg,
Okay.
and then tadpole with the tail, and then a tadpole with legs,
Okay. And then what happens after?
and then it goes arms,
Okay. And then what?
and then the arm with the tail still, and then it turns to a frog.
Oh, then it turns to a frog. Okay. Now I just have one question for you, and I know we can add this just quickly. If I'm the reader, do you have a title yet?
I need this to be straight.
You want it to be straight, so it's easy to read?
I know how to write it straight, even though I'm not writing on the line. Me too.
All right, well, I like that you're adding your title, and I like that your picture's in diagram. Then I'm excited for you to write about and explain all the different changes, okay?
Let's more to fit.
So can you explain to me, buddy, some of the text features you have and what you've been doing with your writing? So what's your title?
Metamorphosis.
Okay. And then I see that you have a picture. What have you drawn in your pictures here?
I drew how a butterfly changes into,
Okay.
a caterpillar changes into a butterfly,
Okay.
and how a tadpole changes into a frog.
Okay, and now you're working on your opener. What does your opener say?
Do you know what metamorphosis means?
So I love how you're talking to the reader. So I'm excited to see your progress from here, okay? Okay, so you're gonna do your writing about a butterfly. You say your opener is butterflies go through metamorphosis. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. Here you talked about first it is an egg, and then you put an arrow to caterpillar, chrysalis, and then a butterfly. But here's what I'm wondering. If I'm the reader, what if I don't know what metamorphosis is?
You can explain it in
Yeah.
a fact box?
You want to explain it in a fact box? Okay. So I like that text feature, and I like that you're gonna. Yeah. So how are you gonna explain metamorphosis to a reader?
That a metamorphosis, it can change from one thing to another.
And does it just change from one thing to another, or is it one thing to a brand
Brand new thing.
Because remember, if it starts as an egg, it's born into a caterpillar. And then I'm wondering too, after it's a caterpillar, for it to become a chrysalis or a pupa, do you remember what it's called? What does a caterpillar make? It makes
Cocoon?
Yeah, cocoon. So I'm wondering if we can use some sentences to explain that for a reader, because some people understand this, and our class will understand this because we've talked about this. But now if we put it into sentences, because sometimes your reader might not know anything about butterflies. All right, so I like that you're going to do a text box to explain what metamorphosis is, and then maybe we go through the different stages with a little more detail. Okay? Okay?
I'm not done
Okay.
writing.
So I'm looking at your writing here, and I see that we might need to make a couple, do a little bit of editing. Now, I love your opening because it says, do you know what metamorphosis means? But I'm wondering, when you start a sentence, what kind of letter goes at the start of the sentence?
D.
Well, what kind of D is it? Is it a lowercase or is it a capital? Remember, D goes the other way. So start with the wall and then away from it. There we go. Okay, so do you know what metamorphosis means? What did you ask the reader?
Do you know what metamorphosis?
Is that a question? So then with your punctuation, how do I know that's a question? Excellent. Now, it means a thing changes to something else, like a butterfly. And I think,
to something else.
okay, now, I think that's great. And in your picture, you've shown that it's gone from an egg to a to a caterpillar, to a chrysalis or a pupa, and then to a butterfly. But I'm wondering if you could explain that picture in words down here. Do you know what I mean?
Look,
So,
it is a cycle. Cycle.
and then it is like a life cycle, and the butterfly might lay an egg to have a new baby. So let's just add a little more detail. So I like that you put an exclamation mark like a butterfly, and let's maybe talk about the different steps it goes through, so people understand that it's not just, because remember you talked about how you thought maybe metamorphosis could be a baby bird growing to a big bird, but remember that's just growing. So in metamorphosis, it's changing from what a caterpillar, so one insect, to a completely different insect in a butterfly. Okay?
Okay.